I never thought working at Jimmy John's would turn into a nightmare. It was just an ordinary fast food restaurant, nestled in the heart of a small, quiet town. During the day, it was bustling with customers craving their favorite sandwiches. But as the sun set and the moon cast eerie shadows, the place underwent a sinister transformation. I was just an employee, trying to make ends meet, and that's when I became a part of a terrifying tale that would haunt me forever. My name is Alex, and I was the night shift manager at Jimmy John's. My shift started at 6:00 p.m. and ended at 2:00 a.m. The restaurant had a decent reputation for its sandwiches and friendly staff during the day, but at night, it took on a different atmosphere. Most of my coworkers were college students, just like me, and we thought it was the perfect job to juggle with our studies. Little did we know what we were getting ourselves into. One evening, as I was preparing the closing tasks, I noticed a strange portrait hanging on the wall near the grill. It was an old photograph of a man, presumably the restaurant's founder, Jimmy John himself. His eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went, and his expression was a mix of amusement and malice. I shook off the unease, attributing it to my tired eyes and overactive imagination. The grill, where we prepared the sandwiches, was at the center of the restaurant. As the night manager, I was responsible for the closing procedures. My coworkers, Lisa, Mike, and Sarah, were busy tidying up the dining area. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the room. "Alex, could you check the freezer in the basement?" "We're running low on roast beef," Lisa called out to me. I nodded and descended into the basement. The stairs creaked with every step, and the musty odor of aging wood filled the air. As I reached the basement, I flipped the light switch, but only a faint, dim light struggled to pierce the darkness. Navigating through the maze of shelves, I finally reached the freezer. The cold air hit me like a blast of Arctic wind. I quickly gathered the boxes of roast beef and began making my way back to the stairs when I heard a soft, whispering sound. It was as if someone was speaking in hushed tones right behind me. I turned around, but the basement was empty. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the creaky old building and my tired mind. As I ascended the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The whispers, though faint, lingered in my ears. Back in the main dining area, I handed the roast beef to Lisa. She raised an eyebrow, noticing my unease. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Alex." "Everything all right?" she asked. I chuckled nervously. Just the creepy basement getting to me, I guess. As the night wore on, the atmosphere inside Jimmy John's grew increasingly eerie. The fluorescent lights flickered more frequently, and the shadows danced on the walls like malevolent spirits. The whispers I'd heard in the basement seemed to echo in the back of my mind, but I tried my best to focus on my work. Around 11:00 p.m., things took a more unsettling turn. We were all gathered near the grill, cleaning up after the last customer had left. That's when we heard it, the sound of laughter. It wasn't just any laughter. It was maniacal, chilling, and it echoed throughout the restaurant. We exchanged horrified glances, unsure of where it was coming from. The laughter continued, growing louder and more deranged. Panic set in as we rushed around, searching for the source. But there was no one there. The laughter seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Lisa, trembling, grabbed my arm. "Alex, This isn't funny. Who's playing this sick joke? I shook my head, my heart pounding. I swear, Lisa, it's not us. We have to find out what's going on. We scoured the restaurant, checking every nook and cranny, but found nothing. The laughter persisted, filling the air with an ominous dread. We even checked the basement, but it was as empty and silent as before. As the clock struck midnight, the laughter abruptly ceased, leaving us in a deafening silence. We exchanged fearful glances, our nerves shattered. Something was terribly wrong with Jimmy John's, and we couldn't explain it. The next few nights were no better. The laughter became a regular occurrence, always striking at the stroke of midnight. Our nerves were frayed, and we began to avoid the basement at all costs. Even during the day, the restaurant felt oppressive, as if it were hiding dark secrets within its walls. One night, as we huddled near the grill, the laughter began as usual. But this time, it was accompanied by a voice, a chilling, raspy voice that seemed to speak directly into our minds. "Who dares to toil in my domain?" It whispered, sending shivers down our spines. "Lisa," her voice quivering, shouted, "show yourself." The laughter intensified, becoming a cacophony of madness. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging us into total darkness. Panic gripped us as we fumbled for our cell phones, using their feeble light to navigate. In the dim glow, we saw something that would haunt us forever. The portrait of Jimmy John on the wall was no longer a photograph. It was a living, breathing man. He stepped out of the frame, his eyes blazing with malevolence. "Welcome to my world," he hissed, his voice echoing through the darkness. We stumbled back, horrified. This couldn't be real. It was impossible. "Get out!" Lisa screamed, and we bolted for the door, leaving behind our belongings and the nightmarish apparition of Jimmy John. As we burst into the cool night air, the laughter and whispers faded into the distance. We stood on the sidewalk, panting and disbelieving, as the once familiar Jimmy John's loomed before us, dark and foreboding. The next day, we returned to the restaurant in broad daylight, determined to retrieve our belongings and make sense of the horrors we had witnessed. But when we entered, it was as if nothing had happened. The lights were on. A portrait of Jimmy John was back to being just a photograph, and the restaurant was filled with customers enjoying their sandwiches as if nothing had ever been amiss. We approached the manager, Mr. Anderson, and hesitantly tried to explain what had occurred. He listened with a patient but skeptical expression. "Look, I understand that you had a rough night, but this is just a fast food restaurant," he said. "There's no such thing as ghosts or haunted grills. You've probably been working too hard, and it's playing tricks on your minds. Take a few days off, get some rest, and you'll see everything will be back to normal." But we knew what we had experienced was real. The laughter, the whispers, the terrifying manifestation of Jimmy John, it couldn't have been our imagination. Still, Mr. Anderson's words planted a seed of doubt, and we reluctantly took his advice, hoping that some time away would bring clarity. However, as the days turned into weeks, our fear never truly subsided. We couldn't shake the feeling that Jimmy John's held a dark secret, one that went beyond our comprehension. We decided to do some research, hoping to uncover the truth about the restaurant's history. What we discovered sent chills down our spines. It turned out that Jimmy John's had a sordid past. Many years ago, but before it became a fast food chain, it was a high-end restaurant owned by a man named Jimmy John himself. The restaurant was known for its exquisite cuisine and lavish parties. But Jimmy John had a reputation for being eccentric and cruel. Legend had it that he was obsessed with the idea of immortality and had dabbled in dark rituals to achieve it. As his obsession grew, so did his cruelty. He was rumored to have enslaved workers and subjected them to torturous experiments in the basement, all in the pursuit of eternal life. One night, a terrible fire had consumed the restaurant, killing Jimmy John and many of his unfortunate employees. The place had been abandoned for years before it was eventually renovated into the fast food joint we knew today. The more we delved into the history, the more we became convinced that the malevolent spirit we encountered was none other than Jimmy John himself, cursed to haunt his restaurant for all eternity. Determined to put an end to the haunting, we gathered supplies, candles, salt, and ancient incantations we found online. Armed with our makeshift ghost hunting kit, we returned to Jimmy John's on a moonless night, ready to confront the evil that lurked within. As we entered the restaurant, the oppressive atmosphere weighed down on us. We lit the candles and formed a circle around the grill, reciting the incantations we had found. The air grew thick with tension, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Suddenly, the laughter erupted once more, louder and more deranged than ever. The portrait of Jimmy John trembled on the wall, and his sinister figure materialized once more. "You dare intrude upon my domain," he bellowed, his voice shaking the very foundations of the restaurant. We stood our ground, our voices trembling but resolute. "You have no power here, Jimmy John. Your reign of terror ends now." With that continued the incantations, pouring salt in a circle around us. The room seemed to warp and twist, as if reality itself was being challenged. The laughter grew more desperate, and Jimmy John's spectral form writhed in agony. "Eno, you cannot banish me," he shrieked. But as we chanted, the malevolent spirit began to weaken. His form flickered and faded, and with one final scream he was gone, leaving behind only the portrait on the wall. We collapsed, exhausted and relieved. The restaurant was silent once more, and the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. We had succeeded in banishing the vengeful spirit of Jimmy John, putting an end to the horrors that had plagued us. From that day on, Jimmy John's was just a restaurant again, a place where people came to enjoy sandwiches without fear. We had rid it of its dark past, but the memories of those bone-chilling nights would forever haunt us. As I write this account, I can't help but wonder if other places harbor similar secrets, if other buildings hold the echoes of past horrors. I've learned that sometimes the ordinary can hide the most extraordinary terrors, and it's up to brave souls to confront them, banishing the darkness and restoring peace to the world.